Letters from a Slave Girl, Part 1, Mama. July 2nd, 1825. Dear Mama, I write this letter to tell you Miss Margaret Horniblow dying. You know she's always been sickly, even when you were alive. This morning Dr. Norcom come. He brung his black bag, and soon as he take out the lancet and bleeding cup, I know the miss is bad off. I never did see a person get well after the doctor finished his bleeding cure. A little while ago, Mrs. asked for me. A-layin' up in that big old four-poster bed, she looked like a pale white heron bird, her eyes all glassy like. Alone with her, I was afraid. Then Miss Margaret slipped this old account book into my hand. "Harriet," she whispered, "you read the Bible and practice your letters. Most slave children don't get any learning," she say. "Now don't waste it." Then she turned her head away. The doctor, he come back and scat me out the door. My little book is filled with numbers and lists. If I turned it over and upside down, I could write on the back side of each page. The blue leather all faded, feels soft like John's bottom when he was just a little baby thing. Mama, I am not so lonesome if I can talk to you in my book. Your daughter, Harriet Ann. July 3rd, 1825. Dear Mama, this letter is letting you know Miss Margaret Horniblow died at dawn. Dr. Norcom brung his wife Maria, and she put silver dollars on the missis's eyes to keep them closed. That is only right, since she, Miss Margaret's sister. Well, my own eyes is red and puffy today. Miss Margaret been almost a mother to me since you left this world 5 long years ago. I love her like I love you. It might hurt you to hear that, but I can't help it. Missus, she keep her promise. Do you remember how she hold your hand when you were so sick? Gran is tell me the story every time I ask her. Don't fret, Delilah, Missus say to you the night you die, I'll take care of your Harriet. And Mama, she did. Miss Margaret showed me how to sew teensy stitches and knots and how to use a silver thimble you gave me. And she teach me how to read and spell. I am teaching my own self how to write. Your Harriet Ann. Please stop here and consider question number 1. July 5th, 1825. Dear Mama, Miss is buried today in a little churchyard. Daddy walked with me to the cemetery. We wait behind the hemlock tree till the white folks gone, then stand by her grave. When my tears fall in the fresh dirt, Daddy wrap his big rough hand round mine, but he don't cry at all. His face look as hard as the headstone that stand watch over that quiet place. He don't say, but I know what the trouble is. Ever since Mr. Knox died and leave Daddy to his daughter, he been living and working on his own. The old man say in his will that Daddy is an old and faithful servant and can buy his freedom for $300. So he been traveling around like a free man long as I can remember. His missus let him stay at his workshop. In return, he pay her $200 a year, a little each month. And all this time he been putting money aside to buy himself. But last year, young missus married the master of Green Hill. Now the new master thinking he might hire Daddy out and keep the earnings for himself. And Daddy don't feelin' mad about it. Seemed like he's always hot as red peppers about something anyway, yelling at me and little John and fussing at us for no good reason. But for all that, Mama, you would still be proud as ever of him. He is still a fine carpenter, and folks around here always asking for Daniel Jacobs to do a job of work. And he have a choice new set of tools, axe, chisel, saw, and some I don't know the name of or what they do. Mama, do you think Miss Margaret going to set me free in her will? He asked Daddy on the way back to town, but his back got stiff as Gran's broom. In the eyes of God, you already free, he say. Then he looked straight ahead and clamped his lips down tight all the way to King Street. Your daughter, Harriet Ann. Please stop here and consider question number 2. July 7th, 1825. Dear Mama, I've been staying with Gran at Hornblow's Tavern till Miss Margaret's will be read next week. Last year, her mother, Miss Elizabeth, moved her farm out on Horniblow Point. She be renting the tavern to old Mr. O'Malley, and Gran go along with it for an extra $20. Now old Missus got a little more money floating in her pocket because she owned a good cook. Daddy went to Greenhall, so John's staying here instead of the workshop. Can you see your son from where you are, Mama? He is small for a 9-year-old and quick as a deer, but he don't have much sense if you ask me. Like this morning, when Gran turned her back to pull the bread loaves out of the oven, John says, "Hattie, race you down to the water." We slip out the back door, and he take off like a hunting dog, hollering pokey at me over his shoulder. He win that race in less than a minute, but guess why? only because he cut through white folks' yard to do it. John S. Jacobs is just like Daddy. He still don't think he's a slave. We sat on the loading dock at the warehouse and watched a schooner come in from Charleston. John's jaw dropped when he see all those muscly-looking men roll hundreds of barrels of rum down the wharf. Then they turn right round and throw huge bales of cotton up on the ship's deck. It's been early morning, not even the heat of the day, but sweat drip off their backs like rain off a roof. Listen, Mama, I did something mean. John looking at big trouble soon if somebody don't wake him up to the facts. I say, John S. Jacobs, you might have to sweat your life out on those wharfs for a master one day. I don't know. I've been a slave till I was 6, I say. Never even heard the word till after Mama died, but I learned quick enough. Now it is time you quit acting free, or you will be tossed like a sack of turnips in that new white brick jail they just built behind the courthouse, and they clang the iron doors shut. John looked at me like he don't even hear what I'm saying. He just laughed and reminded me I'm supposed to weed Grant's patch before lunch. Then he dared me to race him back to the tavern through Mr. Josiah Collins's yard. I hollered no, and tell him it's not safe to fool around the house of the richest man in these parts, especially since he owned our Uncle Joseph. Anyway, Mama, Gran say I'm growing into a woman soon, and I guess women don't run races with little boys, do they? Leastways, I have not seen such. Your Harriet Ann. Please stop here and consider question number 3. July 8th, 1825. Dear Mama, I like being at the tavern with Gran. It is noisy, but I can eat any time I want, and I can see clear down to the bay when I look out the side window. Gran up after midnight making pound cakes to sell this morning. When I wake up, the kitchen smells sweet and sugary. Then I hear her laughing with Miss Willis's woman, Rachel, going on about how many pastries Mrs. W. can eat at one time. They quit giggling when a white woman comes jingling coins, calling for Yeller Molly to counter 3 dozen of her good crackers. I've been learning how to make crackers. First, I sift flour till Gran say I look dusty as Miller. Then she dump everything into a big bowl and show me how to cut in the butter and stir in the milk. Hard part was rolling out the dough. It stuck like pine tar to the rolling pin in the table and even my face. Gran keeps the recipe in her head, but I had to write it out to remember. 1 pound flour, 1 pony glass of sugar, 4 good pinches of salt, butter the size of an egg, and half glass milk. Roll, cut, prick with a fork, and bake in a hot oven till light golden, like the color of my skin, Gran says. Do you know she still hide her bacon money? Since you left, nobody knows where it is except Daddy. I think he gave Gran all his savings when he leave for Green Hall. He growled about not being able to trust plantation folk, but they probably say the same about us town coloreds. Mama, Gran still has that old dream about buying her children. Even with you gone, there is still 3 left to save for. Aunt Betty, Uncle Mark, and Uncle Joseph, and me and John. Well, except for Uncle Joseph, who belonged to Mr. Collins, Miss Margaret owned us all, even Aunt Betty, except she'd been loaned out to the Norcoms since they got married. Who's gonna own us now? Not Gran, I think, if crackers only cost a couple of coppers. And this will break your heart. Miss Elizabeth Horniboat let Gran keep her bacon money, but guess who come knocking at Gran's door asking could she borrow $300? Imagine, Gran say after she leaves, my missus borrowing money from her own slave. I've been making my prayers as strong as I can and reading the Bible. Things might brighten up today. Today, Gran plop a big bowl of cornbread and molasses on the table, then sit right down and look at me hard while I eat. Girl, she say, you got a shine on your face. What you so happy about? Mama, tell me this. Gran know what I think almost before I do. How come it? Because I sort of feel a shivery inside, like good news is on his way. Your sweet girl, Harriet. Please stop here and consider question number 4. July 9, 1825. Dear Mama, tomorrow be the most important day of my 11 years. The lawyers, they read Miss Margaret's will at the courthouse. I know I've been her favorite, and all my friends think she has leave me free. Freedom! That word tastes like Christmas when I say it out loud, like a juicy orange or a cup of sweetened milk. Gran has always been a hopeful person like you, Mama, but she say she can't let hope in the door. You all worth too much money, Gran tell me. She recalled that Mark worth $100 when he was only a boy of 12, and now he a grown man of 25. Slaves over 18 but under 30 bring the high bid, she say, And we don't even speak of the slave trader, like death. If we don't talk about it, maybe it won't happen. But I am not afraid to hope. Not when I remember Miss Margaret Horniblow and you grow up like sisters. Gran's, she say she nursed you both. You were like twins, least till Miss Elizabeth made Gran wean you at 3 months to make sure Margaret getting enough milk. And Gran tell me you and Miss Margaret played together when you were too young to understand the white girl be owning the black one. I know Miss Margaret has remembered her childhood friend, and the promise she made her the night you died. Besides, she herself taught me to read these words from the Bible, "Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself." Tomorrow I taste freedom. Your loving daughter, Harriet Ann. July 10th, 1825. Dear Mama, a long, sad day. Gran fixed breakfast, make 5 chicken pies, and walked back and forth from the tavern to the courthouse to Dr. Norcom's house. She hoping to hear news of the will from Aunt Betty. Aunt Betty say a good housekeeper shut her mouth and open her ears. That way she know everything going on inside and outside the white folks' house. John and I, we getting tired of stoking Gran's bake oven, so we sneaked down to the water. We played tag around the cannons in front of Mr. Collins' house and watched the buoys out in the bay. John, he says the buoys remind him of old Josiah Collins himself because they bob up and down like a duck. Then he act the fool and walk like a duck. But I've been too anxious to laugh, so I shove him to make him stop. After sunset, we run back to the tavern. My heart flop when I see Gran coming up the path through the shadows. From the look on her face, I know she feeling raggedy. She do not speak a word, but sink to her king-bottom chair and make a hum sound like somebody knocked the breath out of her with a stick. "Lord, child," she finally say, "Margaret Horniblow has give you to her niece. Your new missus is a child of 3. You going to live with her, Dr. Norcom and his wife Maria, and their children. But you be special maid to their little Mary Matilda." Gran looked tired and worn out as that old homespun quilt I sleep under. "And what about John and Aunt Betty and Uncle Mark?" I ask. "Well," Gran sighed, "she give them back to her mother." Seemed like our family been passed round like a jug of 10-cent whiskey at the tavern table. First we all belonged to the old Mrs. Elizabeth Horniblow, then we be given to her daughter, Margaret. Now all the property of Miss Elizabeth again except me, and I go to Margaret's niece. And nobody going free. I don't like this Dr. Norcom so very much. He might sell me, auction me like some farm plows to a plantation up the Chowan River. To think of it give me a deep sick feeling. You know plantation master, he usually wait till a slave child is 12 before putting her on the hoe gang in the cotton. But my birthday coming soon, and every year I hear about field hands falling right out in the killing summer heat. Mama, I can't write any more. Harriet Ann. Please stop here and consider question number 5. September 1825. Dear Mama, have you been missing my letters? The Norcoms, they keeping me too busy. It is a strange household. Dr. Norcom and Mrs. Maria, they is cold folk. They don't hardly speak a kind word even to each other. Dr. Norcom, he forever preaching little sermons to his children. He act like he a doctor of the church instead of doctor of medicine. Aunt Betty say Mrs. leave home too young. She only 16 when she married the doctor, and he almost old enough to be her daddy. She been having babies ever since, and it has wore her down. Aunt Betty tell me living with a rip-jack old man has made Mrs. Maria stingy too. I guess that is how come we don't ever get enough to eat. Sometimes only the leftover gravy with no biscuit. Mrs. don't like us getting over to see Gran, but I make sure every errand take me by the tavern. Gran always got a thick slice of wheat bread with preserves for me to share with little John. Mama, you'd have been crying along with me when Elizabeth Horniblow turned John over to Dr. Norcom to be his shop boy. You know the weight of slavery always been heavy on Daddy's shoulders, and he has passed this on to his son. John fights back, but in this house, he's going to pay for it. First thing the doctor do is forbid his sons to teach John how to read and write. I know Daddy always wants us to get book learning, but there will be no ABC for John. Well, the doctor, he can't take away what I already got, except I be writing letters in secret now. And knowing John, he be teaching his own self how to read and write. Harriet Ann. Please stop here and consider question number 6. October 1825. Dear Mama, I wish you were here, 'cause John is about to worry me to death. Last week he was playing ball with some white boys on the courthouse green. Somebody, and John won't tell who, broke 2 courthouse windows. Now there's a sign posted saying, "Every person convicted of breaking the courthouse window by playing ball against the building pays a fine of $5 for each pane of glass so broken." Sounds strict, don't it? But listen to this, Mama. Every slave committed the same offense will be punished by whipping not exceeding 39 lashes. And who is out there playing ball again today? You exactly right. I don't think Gran could stand it if John was tore up by the lash. Daddy be mad or I'll get him to talk to John. Please stop here and consider question 7 and 8. We see Daddy every now and again at the tavern. He's still traveling around to different jobs, but he can't keep any money for himself. It hurt him to see John and me living in the Norcom house. He wants to buy our freedom with the savings, but they won't do business with the slave. I guess that is why his temper is hot as July. He yelled at us to hate slavery. Try to remember he hollered because he loved us. Always 100 chores to do. I sew endless plain seam for the Norcom boys' pantaloons and help Aunt Betty with cooking and cleaning. Yesterday we soaked cucumber in brine till my fingers shriveled up from the salt water. Today we cleaned the parlor. The doctor come in when I was dusting those little round paintings hanging on the wall. He say, "Careful with his miniatures, especially the one of the great Dr. Benjamin Rush." This Rush must be something special, because one of the Norcom boys is named after him. The doctor bragging that Rush taught him heroic medicine, but Rush don't look like a hero to me, just another old white man in a fancy coat. All my other time spent with Mary Matilda. I do get tired of watching her for hours at a stretch. Still, she's sweet, and her baby talk make me smile. Today I make her a doll from dress muslin. Young missus sit on my lap and we pat out the Juber song with the doll's arms. Juber up and Juber down, Juber all around town. With Aunt Betty's company, a little song singing, and Gran's bread, I get through each day. Your H. Please stop here and consider question 9 and 10.